Just as Lin Dong predicted, faced with the trio of Lin Jintian, Lin Xiao and Lin Ken, after the two demonic panthers experienced the initial ruthless counterattack, signs of their eventual defeat gradually began to appear. A series of roars continuously sounded out as the creatures became more and more like cornered animals. Bang! In the middle of the valley, a muffled sound suddenly echoed out. Lin Dong immediately turned to look, only to see that Lin Jintian had forcefully stabbed his two fingers at the forehead of one demonic panther. A powerful yuan power gushed forward, causing Lin Zhenqian's two fingers to become sharp as knives, directly piercing through that demonic black steel panther's hard skull and killing it instantly. Chun Yuan finger. As he saw that familiar attack, a flash of awe surfaced in Lin Dong's eyes. Lin Jintian was definitely at Heavenly Yuan late stage. The force displayed by his Chun Yuan finger was at least several times more powerful than Lin Dong's. At the very least, Lin Dong did not have the slightest bit of confidence in being able to penetrate that Heavenly Yuan tier demonic beast skull with one thrust of his fingers. In the instance that Lin Jintian killed one demonic black steel panther, the other creature immediately released an angry roar. Growl. Just as its growl sounded out, howls from several other ferocious beasts sounded out in reply from the surrounding forest. It seems that the demonic black steel panther had growled to attract them. As he sensed the rumbling sounds of the beasts converging on them, Lin Zhenqian's facial expression slightly darkened. He never imagined that this demonic panther could actually summon other wild beasts. Even though these wild beasts were not as fearsome, if their numbers were large enough, they would still pose a major problem. As Lin Jintian furrowed his eyebrows, above the valley, a red shadow suddenly flashed out as a deep tiger hiss swiftly sounded out. Immediately, the footsteps of the other wild beasts paused as they actually stopped their advance. Heh, seems like that fire python tiger also possessed this ability. Upon witnessing this situation, Lin Jintian heaved a sigh of relief. Nearby, Lin Xiao and Lin Ken attacked simultaneously. With a two-prong attack from the front and back, they finally finished off the other demonic panther in a single punch. These creatures are really difficult to handle. Lin Xiao and Lin Ken exclaimed as they wiped their hands while gazing at the fallen bodies of the two demonic black steel panthers. Little Flame, well done. At the top of the valley, Lin Dong smiled as he praised Little Flame, who was beside him, while patting it. Little Flame intimately rubbed against Lin Dong before it immediately released a deep roar as it leapt down into the valley. Next, it approached the demonic black steel panther corpses and opened its tiger mouth to begin tearing the bodies apart. Finally, it managed to uncover two pitch-black crystals within the corpses. With a flick of its tongue, the two crystals were swallowed into its stomach. This little one is really knowledgeable. It actually knows that there are demonic crystals within their bodies. That level of intelligence is actually quite high. At this point, Lin Jintian furrowed his eyebrows. After all, ordinary demonic beasts did not possess such intelligence. Father, we have resolved this final problem. Shall we start developing this mining lode? Lin Ken smiled as he asked excitedly. Yes. Lin Jintian beamed while nodding his head and said, tomorrow, I will dispatch Lin Mang to Yen City to first find and discuss with some merchant associations on establishing our sales and distribution channels. Then we will be able to immediately sell the Yang Yuan stones straight after they have been mined. After finishing, Lin Jintian held his hands behind his back. With a casual smile, he softly said, every dog has its day. Heh. The Lei and Xie families have bullied our Lin family for so many years, now it's time for payback. Upon hearing these words, a cold glint emerged in Lin Xiao and Lin Ken's eyes as they slowly nodded their heads. All these years, they had silently endured, causing resentment to build up in their hearts. Perhaps, in just a little more time, they would finally be able to dish all this pent-up resentment at the Lei and Xie families. Chapter 60, Tough Training. Qingyang Town, Lei Family. Lei Bao was comfortably resting on a soft sofa in a lavish hall. At his side, two beautiful attendants were carefully massaging him. Is there any activity in the Lin family? Lei Bao, whose eyes were lightly shut, suddenly asked. The Lin family have deployed a huge amount of personnel to the Steelwood Manor and they are guarding it very closely. To Lei Bao's side, a middle-aged man dressed in embroidered robes answered. This man was Lei Pai, second in command in the Lei family and Lei Li's father. Just a bunch of country bumpkins. As expected, they amount to nothing. Upon hearing these words, Lei Bao involuntarily chuckled. Now that a large part of the Steelwood Manor had been ruined, most of its value was lost. However, the Lin family still acted as if they had found a treasure. Haha, even though the Steelwood Manor had lost its former glory, to a low-class family, it is still a valuable asset. How could they give up on it so easily? Lei Pai smiled as he answered. Those bastards from the Lin family caused our Lei family to lose a Steelwood Manor. I will not so easily let this matter go. Lei Bao opened both of his eyes, revealing an icy glare. He turned to look at Lei Pai, who was standing beside him, and said, "Go to Yen City and make use of our contacts there to prevent the Lin family from selling the steel wood." "Heh, I want to make sure that no one will do business with them." "Yes." Upon hearing these words, a sneer surfaced on Lei Pai's face as he nodded his head. "How is Lei Li?" Lei Bao suddenly asked. Losing to that brat from the Lin family was a great blow to him. Lei Pai sighed as he answered. "It's only natural to experience wins and losses in martial arts duels. If he cannot even handle this loss, how can he expect to amount to anything in future?" Lei Bao furrowed his eyebrows for a while before continuing. "Later, go to our storeroom and take out the stored Yang Yuan pills and give it to him. With that item, his training progress should hasten. In future, make sure to cripple that brat from the Lin family." "Many thanks, father." After he heard the words Yang Yuan pill, a flash of delight surfaced on Lei Pai's face as he immediately thanked his father. "Go. Also, remember to instruct the men to increase surveillance on the Lin family." "Humph, it's not so easy to take something away from my Lei family." As he finished his words, a sinister look surfaced on Lei Bao's face. After the demonic Black Panthers were dealt with, covert development of the mining lode began. Everyone that was selected to take part had to pass through a stringent selection process. The selected workers were generously compensated by the Lin family and also allowed to bring their families to the Steelwood Manor. This way, not only were they provided with a place to stay, but it also served a second agenda, a way to safeguard the secrets of the manor and ensure there were no leaks. With regards to this project, Lin Dong was obviously of little help. However, he did not return to Qingyang town because of this. After all, there were many ancient and deep forests surrounding the Steelwood Manor. In these woods were numerous demonic beasts, and he was planning to train himself there. After the clash with those guards from the Lei family, Lin Dong clearly understood that he lacked experience in actual combat. If he did not possess such powerful Yuan power and mastery of martial arts, he would have encountered great difficulty when he faced the Dai-En duo. With regards to actual combat, Lin Dong was unable to target other humans. Therefore, he turned his attention towards the equally fearsome demonic beasts, and the deep forest surrounding the Steelwood Manor provided him with the perfect training grounds. Growl. In the serene forests, an angry roar suddenly sounded out, causing the tree leaves to shiver. If one were to turn towards the direction of the commotion, he would see a giant green wolf pouncing towards a human figure. However, just as that giant wolf opened its foul-smelling mouth to snap the human figure's neck, two fingers suffused with a vigorous Yuan power stabbed through the giant wolf's soft underbelly and fresh, causing hot blood to spurt out. When the fresh blood started to spray out, the human figure pushed the giant green wolf away as he attempted to catch his breath. Numerous scars dotted his body. He was clearly someone who had experienced much fighting. After panting for a while, the human figure finally stood up, revealing a young teenage face. This was Lin Dong. Right now he turned to look at the giant green wolf that had collapsed at this feat and involuntarily laughed. The green wind wolf was a demonic beast that could equal an earthly Yuan practitioner. In these 2 months, Lin Dong had fought numerous times with this fellow. Initially, all he could do was retreat, but now, all he needed was a single blow to end the creature's life. The current Lin Dong did not look much different from 2 months before. However, he gave off a different aura now. That aura completely unrelated to one's looks, but rather, he gave off the feeling of someone who had overcome several life and death struggles. After Lin Dong had dispatched the green wind wolf, a red shadow immediately dashed out from the woods and tore apart the green wind wolf's carcass. When it realized there was no demonic crystal inside, it released an unhappy growl. That red shadow was naturally Little Flame. Over these 2 months, it had accompanied Lin Dong as it also refined itself battle after battle. Thus, it now wore countless battle scars on its body that were results of its fights with other demonic beasts. Right now, after these 2 months of fighting, there was a bloodthirsty stench on Little Flame. The scars on its body made it look exceptionally fearsome. Bit by bit, the glorious aura of the fire python tiger was emerging. Under normal circumstances, the growth rate of Little Flame was baffling. Although it did enjoy the most luxurious treatment and even managed to devour some demonic crystals under Lin Dong's care. Growing from a newly born cub till it was now almost the same size as a mature fire python tiger was indeed stunning. Based on Lin Dong's knowledge, Wu Yun's fire python tiger cub was only as big as his thigh. Furthermore, its combat abilities were far below Little Flame's. With regards to their differences, Lin Dong was also at a loss for words. However, he was thankful that he had followed the Stone Talisman's decision that day. After all, Little Flame was definitely special compared to the other 2 cubs. In these 2 months of training, both Little Flame and Lin Dong had improved substantially. However, the only thing that Lin Dong felt regretful about was that he was still quite far from progressing to Earthly Yuan later stage. Though as a consolation, he had completed unblocked all 7 inner channels of the Qing Yuan arts. Overall, the fruits of these 2 months of training were rather sweet. It's getting late, let's head back. Lin Dong took out a bottle and poured out an elixir pill, stuffing it into Little Flame's mouth. Then, he gazed at the dwindling pills in the bottle as the corners of his mouth formed into a bitter smile while he shook his head. As Little Flame grew, it had become increasingly picky. The stone talisman Ling liquid was unable to suffice it anymore. As he mounted Little Flame, Lin Dong whistled. In response, Little Flame turned into a red shadow as it swiftly dashed out of the woods. Once he returned to the Steelwood Manor, Lin Dong quickly went to wash up. After he changed his clothes, he headed towards the mountain behind the manor and passed through a heavy barricade before finally reaching the mining lode. Right now, the mountain had completely changed. There was a long tunnel stretching deep into the mountain as ding-ding-dang-dang noises constantly sounded out from within. Guarding the tunnel entrance was Lin Xiao. Beside him were 2 large cases. These cases were filled to the brim with light red Yang Yuan stones. Father, the harvest seems pretty good. As he gazed at the 2 cases of glittering Yang Yuan stones, Lin Dong licked his lips and smiled. Right now, we don't have enough utilizable manpower. Therefore, the number of Yang Yuan stones that we can harvest per day is still limited. In these 2 months, we managed to harvest 487 stones. Lin Xiao replied. However, his expression indicated that he was extremely satisfied with this harvest. After all, this was already equivalent to their entire past year's income. These 400+ Yang Yuan stones can be traded for approximately 40 Yang Yuan pills. Yang Yuan pill? Lin Dong was stunned as he inquisitively asked. Some elite practitioners are able to harvest the Yang energy within these Yang Yuan stones and condense them into Yang Yuan pills. These pills are extremely beneficial for any practitioner below Yuan Dan stage. Based on my calculations, it takes 10 Yang Yuan stones to produce 1 Yang Yuan pill. Heh, for some major factions, these Yang Yuan stones and Yang Yuan pills are probably a better currency than silver or gold. Lin Xiao was evidently in a good mood as he slowly explained. Oh? Lin Dong was shocked. This was the first time he heard of this. Father has already decided. Tomorrow, we will send 300 Yang Yuan stones to Yen City and exchange them for Yang Yuan pills in order to bolster our Lin family's strength. Heading to Yen City tomorrow? A flash of delight surfaced in Lin Dong's eyes. Yen City was the largest city nearby, and it was quite famous even in the entire Yen dynasty. It was far more exciting and lively than Qingyang town. Haha, you are the star of our Lin family. Rest assured, I will definitely take you along tomorrow. At Lin Dong's expression, Lin Xiao could not help but laughed as he promised. Lin Dong chuckled and then turned his head as he looked at the chest filled with Yang Yuan stones, a look of awe on his face. To one side, Lin Xiao said a little more before leaving after he instructed the guards to keep a tight watch. Just as Lin Xiao walked away, Lin Dong involuntarily reached out to grab 3 Yang Yuan stones. When his hand grabbed the Yang Yuan stones, the stone talisman embedded his palm suddenly vibrated. Following which, the light red glow of the 3 Yang Yuan stones darkened rapidly. Moments later, the stones turned dull before eventually disintegrating into dust. As he witnessed this sudden development, Lin Dong's facial expression also changed drastically. Chapter 61, Yang Yuan Pills. This chapter was brought to you by Alexej Miller and Ryan Clark. Gazing at the powder falling from the palm of his hand, Lin Dong's facial expression changed drastically. Just as he was about to panic over this matter, he suddenly saw tiny streams of light shooting out from his right palm before finally crisscrossing together and, to his surprise, condensing into a thumb-sized fiery red pill. When that fiery red pill appeared on his palm, Lin Dong's eyelids violently blinked twice. Recalling all the magical properties possessed by the stone talisman, he deduced that it had likely refined the 3 pieces of Yang Yuan stone. As his lips opened briefly, Lin Dong discreetly stuffed that fiery red pill into his sleeves. Then, as he turned around to look, he heaved a sigh of relief when he realized that no one around had noticed this sudden turn of events. Next, he extended his palm again and grabbed 3 pieces of Yang Yuan stone, before he immediately exited the mining lode. Just as he ran into the woods, he shouted towards Lin Xiao with a laugh, "Father, let me play with some Yang Yuan stones." After he shouted, Lin Dong immediately left without waiting for Lin Xiao to reply. This brat. As he stared at Lin Dong's back, Lin Xiao helplessly shook his head. However, he did not take this matter to heart. After all, Lin Dong now held an extremely high status in the family, one that may even exceed his, and no one would think to complain if he took a few Yang Yuan stones. After Lin Dong exited the mining lode, he immediately slipped back towards his room and shut his room door tightly. Finally, he heaved a sigh of relief as he flipped over his palm and a fiery red pill immediately appeared in his eyes. This fiery red pill seemed much more potent and rich compared to the elixir pills refined from those grade 3 elixirs. Thanks to this fiery red complexion, it seemed like this pill contained a massive amount of energy. It felt extremely warm. Is this the Yang Yuan pill that father previously mentioned? Lin Dong muttered to himself as he fiddled with this warm fiery red pill. The Yang Yuan pill that Lin Xiao had mentioned previously was refined from Yang Yuan stones by certain skilled practitioners. In fact, the actions of the mysterious stone talisman seemed exactly similar. However, father did mention that in order to refine one Yang Yuan pill, it would typically require 10 Yang Yuan stones. However, previously, the stone talisman only used 3 Yang Yuan stones. Lin Dong furrowed his eyebrows. If this pill was really the so-called Yang Yuan pill, then there can only be one explanation: the mysterious stone talisman refining skill is at a truly terrifying stage. While others require 10 Yang Yuan stone to refine one Yang Yuan pill, it only required 3 pieces of Yang Yuan stone. Its efficiency was more than 3 times. As he thought of this point, even Lin Dong felt a little taken aback. If news of this matter spread out, it would definitely cause a major commotion. In fact, after this commotion, the most likely possibility was that he would be captured by some powerful major factions and forced to refine Yang Yuan pills daily in a tiny dark room. Lin Dong wiped off his cold sweat as he immediately focused his attention on the 3 Yang Yuan stones on his lap. He was curious to determine if the stone talisman truly possessed such a terrifying ability, and he decided to test it again. As this thought flashed through his mind, without further ado, Lin Dong immediately removed the 3 Yang Yuan stones from his lap and stacked them on his right palm. Buzz! Just as that 3 Yang Yuan stones were piled on his palm, tiny streams of light burst out from his palm against. Under the glare of these light beams, the Yang Yuan stone began to darken rapidly, before it immediately turned into a pile of dust moments later. Just as the Yang Yuan stones turned into dust, the light beams crisscrossed, as a fiery red pill once again appeared on Lin Dong's palm. It is indeed the case. As Lin Dong stared at that fiery red pill, he involuntarily heaved a deep breath, as a serious expression surfaced on his face. This matter must be concealed. As he softly sighed, Lin Dong released a pained laugh. Perhaps some truly powerful practitioners possess such a terrifying refining ability. However, he was not one of them. Right now, he was not some powerful elite practitioner, hence if he displayed this ability, it will not only inspire awe, but also bring about disaster. In fact, it may even devastate the entire Lin family. Let's test out the effects of this Yang Yuan pill. Lin Dong flicked his head, as he gradually calmed himself down. Then, he took off his shoes and sat on his bed. However, he did not immediately swallow that Yang Yuan pill. Instead, he chose to exert Qing Yuan arts first, in order to absorb the Yuan power from between heaven and earth, and strengthen his body and Dan Yuan. Lin Dong kept training quietly for approximately an hour, before he finally popped that Yang Yuan pill into his mouth. Thud! Just as that Yang Yuan pill entered his body, Lin Dong's both ears suddenly heard a loud echo. Instantly, a tsunami of warmth energy quickly spread across his body. This energy was rich and powerful, however it was not savage and could be easily absorbed. Therefore, one's body felt extremely warm, just like soaking in a sauna, extremely comfortable. As that warm energy circulated around his body, it seeped into his bones, inner channels, and flesh before it finally poured into his Dan Yuan. Hualala! As that tsunami wave energy poured into his Dan Yuan, Lin Dong could vividly feel that the Yuan power within his Dan Yuan had grown and strengthened. Eventually, he even heard crisp hualala sounds echoing out. Huff! As the Yuan power in his Dan Yuan grew stronger, steam starting to emerge from Lin Dong's head. Moments later, his calm body began to vibrate uncontrollability. As he opened both of his eyes, a bright Yuan power involuntarily undulated on his bodice outer surface, just like tidal waves. Earthly Yuan later stage. As he sensed the powerful Yuan power within his Dan Tian, an uncontrollable delight surfaced on Lin Dong's face. After 2 fruitless months of training, he had finally achieved a breakthrough. In just 5 months' time, Lin Dong had advanced from Earthly Yuan early stage to Earthly Yuan later stage. This training progress is enough to shock anyone. Even that famed Lin Langtian took 2 years before he advanced from Earthly Yuan stage to Heavenly Yuan stage. Even though it was difficult to advance from earthly yuan later stage to heavenly yuan stage, Lin Dong was confident that, in a year's time, he will break through to heavenly yuan stage. Lin Dong's was already a talented individual. In addition to his own hard work and perseverance, and help from the stone talisman, his training progress is unmatched. This is indeed a Yang Yuan pill. Lin Dong lifted his head, as he exhaled a mouth of white air. A comfortable sensation slowly spread out across his body, as he muttered to himself, while keeping both of his eyes gently shut. Chapter 62, Yen City. This chapter was brought to you by Ryan Clark. The next day, in front of the Steelwood Manor, were several horse carriages neatly aligned together. Stacked on these horse carriages were piles of bounded steel wood. On the surface, the purpose of this trip to Yen City was to sell steel wood. However, the real motive was to sell the Yang Yuan stone. However, this real motive could not be easily revealed. Or else, it could lead to some unexpected trouble. With regards to this first sale, Lin Jintian placed heavy emphasis on it and he decided to lead it personally. In addition, he even instructed Lin Xiao, Lin Mang and several hundred guards to accompany him. This was a pretty significant force, and normal bandits would definitely not dare to harass them. Lin Jintian rode atop of a handsome horse. With a powerful aura and a tough body, one has to truly respect this old man who single-handedly built up his family in this Qingyang town. Has everyone arrived? After a cursory inspection, Lin Jintian turned his head towards Lin Xiao and asked. Seated beside Lin Xiao, Lin Dong also rode on a handsome horse. For this journey to the Yen City, the most important thing was to avoid trouble. Since little flame will inadvertently attract much attention, it was best to leave it in the Steelwood Manor. After hearing Lin Zhenqian's inquiry, Lin Xiao nodded his head as he replied in a deep voice, "It's all ready. We can leave any time." Good. Upon hearing his reply, Lin Jintian nodded his head in satisfaction. Without further ado, he waved his hand as he promptly raised his whip and instructed his horse to dash off towards the main road. As Lin Jintian left, the massive army immediately followed amidst a series of echoes. As he clipped his legs around the horse's back, Lin Dong turned to wave goodbye to Qing Tan, before he immediately followed behind them. Yen City was the closest major city located near Qingyang town. Of course, this was only a comparative way of speaking, because when Lin Jintian and the rest arrived at the outskirts of Yen City, it was already noon. The major road leading up to Yen City was filled with people and it was extremely crowded and noisy, causing Lin Dong to involuntarily swallow his tongue. Even though they had not arrived at Yen City, it was already this crowded. One could only imagine the crowd when one arrives in the middle of Yen City. Donger, when we arrive in the city, do not stir up any trouble. This Yen City is extremely complicated, and there could be many powerful people hidden within. Remember that some of them must not be offended. As he stared at Lin Dong's inquisitive face, Lin Xiao, who was standing beside him, immediately warned him. Lin Dong smiled, before he suddenly asked, "Father, this Yen City is so much bigger than Qingyang town. The battles between its major factions must surely be more intensive? In this Yen City, approximately one major faction dies every month, while a new faction takes its place. So what do you think?" Lin Xiao smiled as he answered. However, in this Yen City, there are three major factions that stand above the rest. No one can threaten their position. Oh? Which three? Lin Dong curiously asked. Yen City Lord Manor, 10,000 gold merchants and Blood Wolf Gang. Lin Xiao pursed his lips. These factions were definitely in a different league compared to their Lin family. In these three major factions, there are numerous highly skilled practitioners. In fact, some of them even have Dan Yuan practitioners. In the Yen City outskirts, even though there are numerous other factions, most of them rely on these three major factions to survive. Lin Dong silently muttered to himself, as he gently nodded his head. In this place, only a Yuan Dan practitioner had the right to speak. Haha, no need to be discouraged. Once our Lin family successfully develops that mining lode, we can develop another Yuan Dan practitioner. At that time, our Lin family will have a place in this Yen City. As he saw Lin Dong turn silent, Lin Xiao thought that he had been discouraged. Therefore, he immediately approached him as he smiled and told him. After hearing these words, Lin Dong smiled. Then Yuan stage. He was truly curious regarding this stage. The horse carriages calmly traversed through the crowd as it finally reached the gates of Yen City. As he saw that nearly 100-foot tall wall surrounding the city, Lin Dong swallowed his tongue again. Comparing Qingyang town with this city, it definitely seemed a little lackluster. After they paid a small token at the city's gate, the horse carriages successfully entered Yen City. After they passed through a dark and serene tunnel, immediately, a deafening noise swarmed them like a tidal wave, causing Lin Dong, who was not prepared at all, to feel a little nauseous. Moments later, he recovered his senses, only to see huge crowds of people on the streets. As he turned to look at the grand architecture in the city, he involuntarily released a deep breath. Let's look for a place to rest first. This was evidently not the first time that Lin Jintian and the rest visited Yen City, as they seemed pretty familiar with the roads when they lead the carriages through multiple streets, before they finally settled down at a serene inn. They settled their plan in the inn. They would split into two forces. The first division would be led by Lin Mang, and he was in charge of selling the steel wood. As for Lin Jintian and Lin Xiao, they would personally take charge of 2 cases of Yang Yuan stone. Finally, Lin Dong and the rest of the guards would stay behind in the inn. As he saw Lin Jintian and the rest leaving, Lin Dong was exasperated. After approximately half an hour's time of waiting, he finally decided to venture out on his own. After all, it was a rare opportunity to visit Yen City, and he did not want to waste it sitting in this inn. As Lin Dong casually loitered in Yen City, because he did not have a defined purpose, he decided to follow the crowds. Eventually, he slowly drifted towards the center of the city. Perhaps it was because there were several factions. Compared to Qingyang Town, this Yen City seemed to be more chaotic. Along the way, Lin Dong saw 3 different groups of people fighting with each other. However, with regards to these scuffles, most people seemed indifferent to them. In fact, there were several in the crowd cheering them on. Based on their expressions, it seemed like they were not worried that they would be involved. Lin Dong was not particularly interested in these disputes, therefore he only glanced at them before he turned to leave. After traveling through several streets, he finally stopped in front of a fairly large and grand building. Mysterious Objects Tower. As Lin Dong stared at the 3 words inscribed on the tower, a flash of awe surfaced in his eyes. Even someone like him, who rarely ventured into Qingyang Town, had faintly heard of this Mysterious Objects Tower. Henceforth, this was evidently a famous landmark. As he stood in front of the door, Lin Dong hesitated for a moment, before he finally stepped inside. As Lin Dong stepped through the door, a large hall immediately surfaced in front of his eyes. In this large hall were numerous shelves, and within these shelves were numerous items being displayed. Elixirs, elixir pills, weapons, demonic crystals, martial arts manuals. As he glanced around, Lin Dong saw all kinds of items. He immediately understood that most of these items were not of an ordinary background. Haha, this young gentleman here. What do you require? As Lin Dong was staring around at the items in the shelf, an assistant dressed in green clothes walked over and asked with a smile, before he took out a long black sword from a shelf. Black steel sword. This was forged from 100 pieces of black steel. It is extremely sharp and can even cut through feathers. Furthermore, a famous master carved symbols and injected yuan power into it. Therefore, it can pierce through any armor. If you possessed it, it would definitely boost your fighting abilities. Lin Dong looked at that black sword and saw that inscribed on it was a weird wiggly symbol that was faintly glowing. Shaking his head, Lin Dong was evidently not interested in this item. After witnessing the situation, that assistant had no choice but to put that steel sword away, before he tirelessly recommended other items to Lin Dong. Lin Dong did not pay much heed to him, as he slowly scanned through the shelves. Moments later, he suddenly stopped. Right in front of his eyes stood a small palm-sized green sack. A weird glow flashed on the surface of that rope sack. Low-level Qian Kuan bag, 48 Yang Yuan stones. Chapter 63, Symbol Master. Low-grade Qian Kuan bag. Made from Qian Kuan wood, and the mystical symbols inscribed on it were done by a second seal symbol master. Don't be fooled by its small size. It can contain an object the size of a desk and still allow its user to easily carry it along. A very convenient item that can solve many problems. Observing that Lin Dong seemed to have taken an interest in the Qian Kuan bag, the assistant in green quickly introduced the item as he smiled. Lin Dong was perplexed. He did not expect to encounter such a magical item that he had never heard of before. Yen City was truly in a different league from Qingyang Town. Second seal symbol master? Just as Lin Dong was surprised by the unusual function of the Qian Kuan bag, the particular title mentioned by the assistant caused his heart to tremble. In the Great Yen Empire, there was a unique vocation termed Symbol Master. It is reputed that these people could condense yuan power from heaven and earth into special mystical symbols. As for these mystical symbols, the various ways in which they were structured allowed them to possess different abilities. For example, the black steel sword from before also had a mystical symbol carved onto it which upgraded its durability and sharpness. Symbol Master was one of several different vocations that branched out from the path of those who practiced the martial way. However, for this vocation, one not only needed a certain level of strength in the physical body as support, but it also placed a heavy and strict demand on one's mental capacity. Therefore, Symbol Master was considered a scarce vocation. These symbol masters also have their own ranking system. According to Lin Dong's knowledge, they were split by seals and there were a total of 5 seals, first seal being the lowest, while fifth seal being the highest. Of course, Lin Dong did not know if there were more advanced levels beyond that. Typically speaking, even the minimum requirements to become a first seal symbol master was to reach earthly yuan stage. In fact, if one could advance to second seal symbol master, he would be lavishly welcomed by any major faction in Yen City. Hence, when Lin Dong heard that this Qian Kuan bag had a mystical symbol inscribed on it by a second seal symbol master, he was a little surprised. With regards to this Qian Kuan bag, Lin Dong was very interested. However, its price caused him to furrow his eyebrows. Their Lin family took 2 whole months to harvest over the 400 or so Yang Yuan stones. However, this Qian Kuan bag alone required nearly 1/10 of their harvest. Lin Dong definitely could not procure 48 Yang Yuan stones. Therefore, after a deep sigh, he took out a bottle from within his clothes. Contained within that bottle were 10 elixir pills of various colors. These were naturally refined by Lin Dong from grade 3 elixirs. Have someone take a look at this and tell me how much they are worth. Lin Dong smiled as he placed the bottle on the counter. Upon hearing these words, that assistant dressed in green started examining the elixir pills within the bottle. The fact that he could be employed as an assistant here clearly meant that he was equipped with a discerning eye. Instantly, awe flashed across his face before he promptly shook a small bell behind him. Soon after the bell rang, a middle-aged man, that seemed like the manager, quickly walked over. He was all smiles as he asked, "Is this young gentleman here to sell something?" While he spoke, he had already turned his attention towards the bottle on the counter. He reached out to retrieve 1 elixir pill and placed the pill under his nose and took 2 gentle sniffs. His eyebrows involuntarily twitched as he said, "The pills from this young gentleman here should be refined from elixirs? The medicinal property is gentle and pure, extremely suitable for tempered body or earthly yuan practitioners." "I guess so." Lin Dong scratched his head as a foolish expression appeared on his face. Based on that expression, it seemed like he knew little about these elixir pills. After seeing his expression, that middle-aged man chuckled. He already secretly thought in his heart that Lin Dong had acquired these elixir pills by luck. "Little brother, this is my deal. For these elixir pills, I will trade them each for 5 yuan stones. What do you think?" A glint flashed across that middle-aged man's eyes as he asked. "So based on my calculations, if I buy this Qian Kuan bag, I will only have 2 Yang Yuan stones left? Then I don't want it." Lin Dong rolled his eyes as he immediately grabbed the bottle back. "Haha, no hurry. So what does the young gentleman propose?" Upon seeing the situation, the middle-aged man hurriedly asked. 1 for 10. As he heard his childlike tone, that middle-aged man felt slightly helpless. Shaking his head, he uttered, "All right, 1 for 7. I won't cheat you. This price is considered fair, what do you think?" "All right." This time, Lin Dong did not hesitate as he agreed immediately. After seeing his straightforward expression, that middle-aged man let out a bitter laugh. He then instructed the assistant beside him to retrieve the Qian Kuan bag before he placed the remaining Yang Yuan stones into the bag in front of Lin Dong. Lin Dong somewhat impatiently received the bag. As Lin Dong stretched his hand inside the bag to grab onto those warm Yang Yuan stones, he could feel that it was slightly rough around the entrance. Even though the interior of that Qian Kuan bag was not enormous, Lin Dong was still extremely pleased with it. "Haha, young gentleman. If you have more of these elixir pills, you can continue to sell them to us. The price will be the same." As he saw Lin Dong play with that Qian Kuan bag, that middle-aged man smiled as he said, "All right, next time I will return to the same spot where I found them and see if I can find any more." Towards the middle-aged man's words, Lin Dong earnestly nodded as he replied. That middle-aged man's face twitched slightly before he finally nodded his head with a dry smile. In his heart, Lin Dong secretly chuckled. Then, ignoring that middle-aged man, he turned his attention towards the Qian Kuan bag. Finally, his gaze, inadvertently concentrated on the left side of that Qian Kuan bag where a unique mystical symbol was faintly discernible. Lin Dong kept his gaze peeled on that unique mystical symbol as his mind unconsciously concentrated on it. Based on his expression, it seemed like he had encountered an extremely interesting object. Just as Lin Dong was fixated on that symbol, his vision suddenly turned slightly blurry. However, as his surroundings turned blurry, the symbol faintly printed on the Qian Kuan bag gradually became clearer and clearer. Under this peculiar circumstances, Lin Dong's mind suddenly felt a unique undulation. That was mental energy. Streams of formless mental energy flowed out from his brain and actually appeared in front of him, before they slowly intersected together. Although the shape they formed was crude and blurry, it seemed somewhat similar to that complicated symbol on that Qian Kuan bag. In the end, the final picture was not completed. When half of the symbol was formed, he suddenly felt a violent pain in his mind. Promptly, he recovered his wits and found himself completely drenched in cold sweat. Stunned, he evidently did not understand what had just happened. In a corner of the mysterious objects building sat an old man clothed in gray clothes. He sleepily sat to one side while his surroundings seemed extremely messy and looked out of place compared to the tidy and orderly look the rest of the place had. However, from start to end, no one dared to make a single sound to disturb him. Whoever walked past him, be it employees or customers, all softened their footsteps as they did not dare to cause even the slightest disturbance. The old man also seemed oblivious towards his surroundings. With both of his eyes tightly shut, he seemed to be on the verge of falling asleep. However, this state was momentarily disrupted. He suddenly opened his tightly shut eyes and turned his head to stare at a young man nearby. A heavy look of awe flashed in the former's eyes as his mumbling voice slowly sounded out. Such a strong mental energy talent. Chapter 64, Grand Master Yen. When Lin Dong awoke from that peculiar state, he found that his whole body was drenched with cold sweat. He trepidly looked at the Qian Kuan bag in his hands, struggling to comprehend what just happened. Fortunately, mental energy was formless and colorless, therefore, no one else had witnessed the mystical symbol forming. Otherwise, it might draw several strange gazes. Did you sell these elixir pills? Lin Dong secretly heaved a sigh of relief as he stuffed the Qian Kuan bag into his sleeves. Just as he was about to leave, a female voice echoed out, causing Lin Dong to stop in his step. He turned his head back, only to see a young lady dressed in a light red dress standing beside the counter, waving a bottle at him. This young lady looked extremely elegant and beautiful, her small cherry-like mouth, fine eyebrows and slim figure drew the fiery gazes of several males. However, the only regrettable point was the indifferent look on that beautiful face. Furthermore, this young lady gave off an aura of nobility. She was definitely from a wealthy and respectable family. Behind that young lady, a middle-aged man followed. Even though that man did not speak a single word, Lin Dong could feel a form of pressure emitting from the man's body. This type of pressure was something he had felt before from Lin Xiao and the rest. Evidently, this bodyguard-like fellow was at Heavenly Yuan stage. Why? Lin Dong glanced at that young lady. Even though the latter was very pretty, he did not lose his composure as he inquisitively asked. These elixir pills are very suitable for tempered body practitioners. I have a sister that requires it. If you have any more, you can sell them all to me in bulk. I am sure that you will be very satisfied with my price. That young lady casually said after she looked at Lin Dong and felt that there was nothing extraordinary about the latter. Furthermore, based on his unfamiliar appearance, he seemed unlikely to be some young master from any of the major factions in Yen City. Lin Dong eyebrows raised slightly. Though the young lad's tone made him somewhat uncomfortable, he was still able to tolerate it. Immediately, he waved his hands as he replied, I have no more. I was just lucky that one time. If you are interested, I can find you when I have the fortune of coming across such treasures again. After hearing these words, that young lady's elegant eyebrows involuntarily knitted together. She did not feel accustomed to Lin Dong's tone and expression. In Yen City, she was used to fawning and flattering every day. This was one of the few times that someone had tactfully rejected her. Hey. Ching Su, if you need elixir pills, just tell me. Why is there a need for you to find others to buy from them? Just as that young lady furrowed her eyebrows, a laughter suddenly rang out. Promptly, Lin Dong saw a handsome man dressed in embroidered robes swiftly walking over. When she saw that man appear, a look of disdain immediately flashed across Ching Su's face. To one side, Lin Dong shook his head as he saw the scene. He was not interested in the affairs between these pampered young masters and misses, and immediately turned to leave. However, just as he turned around, he saw a figure standing in front of him. Lin Dong looked up, only to see that it was that middle-aged man that was standing behind that young lady. Young lady, what do you plan on doing? Lin Dong's facial expression darkened as his gaze turned towards the young lady. I want these kind of elixir pills. I believe you should have more. The young lady dressed in red replied. Ha, so you are robbing me now? After hearing these words, Lin Dong coldly chuckled. Even though this young lady looked very pretty, she was extremely irksome. Did she think that everything under the sun is entitled towards her? I told you, I will give you a generous price. The young lady dressed in red furrowed her eyebrows. Evidently, she did not understand Lin Dong's resistance. Haha, young gentleman. If Ching Su fancies this item, just give it to her. You must have heard of the Lu family of Yen City? It's always better to make friends than enemies. Upon seeing that the young lady was insistent on buying the pills that Lin Dong had, the man that had previously appeared before him walked over with a smile and softly said to Lin Dong, "Yen City Lu family?" After hearing these words, Lin Dong suddenly understood. This Lu family was considered a major faction in Yen City. In fact, its power was second only to that of the Yen City governor, the 1,000 gold merchants and the Blood Wolf gang. Therefore, it was considered quite a powerful faction in Yen City. No wonder this young lady could afford to be this haughty. It turns out that she had a pretty impressive background. My apologizes. These elixir pills were truly acquired by chance. Even if you want more, there is nothing I can do about it. Lin Dong shook his head again. Ignoring the darkening expression on that man's face, he turned to leave. Hold it. After he saw Lin Dong's actions, that handsome young man's expression turned into a mix of green and red as he decided to step in. With a shout, his palm clawed towards Lin Dong's shoulder. Get lost. As he sensed that powerful force behind his body, anger swelled up in Lin Dong's heart. Immediately, a thick yuan power rapidly rushed to his fist as it flew forward to clash against that man's palm attack. Bang! A gale blew forth. Lin Dong's shoulder jerked as he unloaded a strong force. Meanwhile, that handsome young man was blown back a step. To think that this person's strength is at earthly yuan later stage 2. After they crossed blows, a smither of shock flitted across Lin Dong's eyes. He did not expect that this greasy-looking fellow actually had some ability. In comparison to the shock in Lin Dong's heart, that young man was also extremely taken aback in his heart. Even though he could not be considered as one of the finest younger generation member in Yen City, he was considered as one of the elites. However, he did not expect that he was unable to take care of a seemingly 15-16-year-old youngster. After he pushed back that man with a punch, Lin Dong rapidly retreated. However, just as he was retreating, that heavenly yuan practitioner nearby suddenly made his move. His huge hands were like an eagle's claw as they swiftly swiped at Lin Dong. When he saw the heavenly yuan practitioner make his move, Lin Dong's expression somewhat darkened. Yuan power swiftly gushed from his dantian as his hands also rapidly formed a series of complex hand seals. Boom! However, just as Lin Dong prepared to use his strongest move to counter that heavenly yuan early-stage practitioner, the middle-aged man that was charging forward abruptly came to a halt as a gentle formless force erupted before him and jolted him backwards. Fighting is prohibited in the mysterious objects building. Don't you know the rules? Lin Dong was slightly taken aback by this sudden development. As he turned his head, he saw an old man dressed in gray robes, who had unknowingly appeared behind him. Grand Master Yen. After seeing this elderly man clothed in gray clothes, all traces of haughtiness disappeared from the young lady clothed in red and handsome young man's faces. Based on their respectful expressions, Lin Dong deduced that this old man was probably an extraordinary figure. Grand Master Yen, Ching Su was lacking in manners. Please have mercy. As he gazed at the suddenly respectful young lady, that old man casually waved his hands, not paying much heed to her. Instead, he turned to look intensely at Lin Dong, who was standing in front of him. Moments later, he suddenly extended a wrinkled finger and lightly tapped on the spot between Lin Dong's eyebrows. Lin Dong was stunned as he saw the old man's action. He tried to dodge, but to his horror, he found that he had lost all control over his body. The old man's finger quickly came to a stop at Lin Dong's forehead. The former could clearly feel an extraordinarily lively mental energy contained within the latter's mind. Instantly, a flash of delight surfaced on his stern old face. "Young man, are you interested in becoming a symbol master?" The old man's following words caused the smile on the young lady and man's faces to turn stiff and rigid. Chapter 65, Obstruction. The area where Lin Dong and the rest were at suddenly became much quieter after that old man uttered those words. Not only did that young lady dressed in red turn stiff, but even the shopkeeper and assistant, who were respectfully standing to one side, were also dumbstruck. Symbol master? Lin Dong was also taken aback as he looked at that old man in gray. Based on the respectful expressions from the people nearby, the latter must be a big shot in Yen City. However, he did not understand, why did this big shot suddenly utter these words to him? Lin Dong had always maintained a certain level of cautiousness towards strangers, especially in circumstances that seem almost too good to be true. His finger drew circles on his palm. He knew that his biggest secret lay within this flesh. Right now, he was not confident that he could completely hide the secret in front of some truly skilled practitioners. Old mister, right now I am still quite weak. If I further distract myself by practicing symbol arts, I am afraid it will hinder my progress. I hope you can understand and forgive me. As thoughts rapidly swirled around in Lin Dong's mind, he finally gave this reply, which once again caused the facial expressions of that young lady clothed in red and the rest to change even more dramatically. They stared at him as though they were looking at a fool. This fellow. Does he know how many people dream of becoming Grand Master Yan's disciple? How dare he reject his offer? Haha, becoming a symbol master is not only about inscribing mystical symbols on objects. A real symbol master can easily shake mountains and move rivers. This rejection clearly caused the old man dressed in gray to be slightly startled. Promptly, he smiled as he elaborated. After all, he felt that it would be a huge waste not to develop this outstanding mental energy potential. However, the more gracious he was, the more Lin Dong did not dare to agree. If he had no secrets, he would gladly accept the offer from this almost certainly extraordinary man of power. It was a pity that he was now in possession of the mysterious stone talisman. He was not certain if the person before him would still be this friendly if this secret was exposed. Old mister, please allow me to go back and discuss this with my family. Once I reach a conclusion, I will return here to look for you. After deliberating for a while, Lin Dong finally replied. Since you are currently not interested, I won't force you. Once you have thought it through, you can bring these items to the 1,000 gold merchants and look for me. After all, it seems like we were fated to meet, so let me give you these items to help you better understand the path of a symbol master. With regards to Lin Dong's insistence, the old man felt slightly resigned. Without further ado, he took out 2 items from his chest, a talisman and a book, and tossed them towards Lin Dong. Many thanks, old mister. Lin Dong received these items before immediately shoving them into the newly purchased Qian Kuan bag. When he saw the perplexed gazes from the crowd nearby, he decided that he could not afford to stay any longer. Instantly, he turned towards that handsome young man, who was still in his way, and asked, "May I?" After hearing these words, that young man regained his wits. His lips twitched for a second, but in the end, he finally decided to step aside. Previously, based on his own background, he need not even bother with Lin Dong. However, the situation had now reversed. Since Grand Master Yan had taken a liking towards Lin Dong, the young man was unable to be as unbridled as before. To one side, the young lad's lips twitched a little, but she eventually calmed down. Judging from this situation, it seems like Grand Master Yan had taken a liking to Lin Dong. If Lin Dong really became his disciple in the future, then he would become a notable person in Yan City. Therefore, it would be unwise to offend him. As they fell silent, Lin Dong straightaway passed that young man and swiftly exited this strange atmosphere in the mysterious object's tower before quickly blending into the crowded streets. After he entered into the crowd, Lin Dong finally heaved a sigh of relief. He did not bother to shop anymore as he directly went back to the guest house where they were resting at. Soon after he arrived at the guest house, Lin Jintian and the rest also returned one by one. "Father, how did it go?" Lin Dong could not help but ask when he saw Lin Xiao and the rest return. "Haha, not bad. After all, it's really easy to sell these Yang Yuan stones and we got a pretty decent price too." 300 Yang Yuan stones were exchanged for 32 Yang Yuan pills. Lin Xiao smiled as he nodded his head. Based on his expression, it seemed like the sale worked out pretty well. Standing beside him, Lin Jintian also beamed as he nodded. As they were conversing, the tightly shut door was pushed open once again and Lin Mang walked in with a dark expression on his face. What happened? As he saw Lin Mang's expression, Lin Jintian furrowed his eyebrows and asked. The price of the steel wood was forcefully lowered by 30. Damn it. It took me a massive amount of effort before I found out that the Lei family had purposely pulled strings to shortchange us. Lin Mang gritted his teeth as he said. After hearing these words, Lin Jintian and Lin Xiao's facial expressions also slightly darkened. This Lei family was truly persistent in causing trouble for them. Forget it, let's drop this issue for the time being. The most important thing right now is the Yang Yuan stones. We will make sure to settle everything else with them in the future. After a moment of silence, Lin Jintian finally exclaimed with a wave of his hand. So long as the mining lode was established, the sale of the steel wood was just a minor matter. Yes. Lin Xiao and Lin Mang nodded their heads. As Lin Jintian had said, currently, the most important matter was still the Yang Yuan stones. Since our business here is settled, we should get moving. Lin Jintian muttered. After all, several elite members of the Lin family were mobilized this time, and it was best that they did not stay away for too long. With regards to Lin Zhenqian's decision, no one objected as they immediately nodded their heads. Then, they began to give instructions to organize the transportation and leave the city. When Lin Jintian and the rest were preparing to leave the city, in a certain room located in Yan City, 2 figures were seated. One of them was Lei Pai from Lei family. Haha, this time, we must really thank Manager Hua. Lei Pai smiled as he poured a cup of tea for the greasy fat man seated in front of him. Based on our ties, this is just a small matter. Every wood resource that passes through Yan City is connected to us. We dictate the amount supply taken in. What can one tiny Lin family do? Lei Pai smiled as he nodded his head. That fatty rubbed his glossy and chubby face, before he turned to look at Lei Pai and said, based on my knowledge, the Lin family actually went to 2 places to sell items. Steelwood was just one of them. Oh? After hearing these words, Lei Pai was stunned. When he saw the inscrutable smile on that fatty's face, in flash of understanding, he immediately took out 5 pieces of Yang Yuan stone and placed them before the fatty. With a smile, Lei Pai said, "This is for all your troubles, Manager Hua." They were split into 2 teams. Lin Mang was selling steel wood while Lin Jintian and the rest went to the other merchants. If my source is reliable, they sold a batch of Yang Yuan stones there. The fatty smiled as he kept the Yang Yuan stones in his sleeves before he finally replied. Haha, this is indeed peculiar. A small Lin family could actually procure several hundred Yang Yuan stones. I wonder how many years they have been collecting. Several hundred Yang Yuan stones? As he heard that fatty's slightly unconvinced mutterings, Lei Pai's expression slowly turned ugly. Chapter 66, Spiritual Movement Chapter. Seated on horseback, Lin Dong involuntarily heaved a sigh of relief when he finally saw the manor appearing in his line of sight. Although bandits were not very rampant on the route from Qingyang Town to Yen City, outlaws could still be found here and there. He had frequently heard stories of merchants being robbed. Thankfully, since they had mobilized such a powerful force this time, they encountered little trouble. As they returned with a bountiful harvest, cheers and applause slowly began to sound out in the manor. Lin Dong leapt off his horse's back as he smiled at the red figure that was dashing towards him. The red figure that was dashing towards him was naturally Little Flame. It intimately stroked its head against Lin Dong as it produced a deep purr. Lin Dong smiled as he rubbed Little Flame. Then, he turned his sight to gaze at Qing Tan, who was slowly walking towards him. From his person, he took out a crystal-like bracelet and said, "A present for you." "Thank you, Lin Donga." After she saw this unexpected gift, the young lady instantly squealed in delight before she immediately rushed over to receive the bracelet and sweetly thank her brother. "Haha, it's getting late. Let's all head back and rest." To one side, Lin Jintian dismissed the convoy with a wave of his hand as he smiled and said to the crowd. Lin Dong chuckled before he turned to return home. On the journey back, he described the various differences and peculiarities of Yen City to the young lady beside him, which caused her to occasionally let out clear sounds of excitement. The dim light illuminated the neat and tidy room. Lin Dong sat on his bed with both of his eyes tightly shut. Simultaneously, he was practicing Qing Yuan arts, which caused in the Yuan power between heaven and earth to visibly ripple as streams of Yuan power began to slowly seep in through his unblocked inner channels before they were subsequently absorbed by his body. This type of quiet training lasted for nearly an hour before Lin Dong gently opened his eyes. He then removed a jade bottle from within his Qian Kuan bag. Contained within this bottle were 5 light red elixir pills. These were Yang Yuan pills. This time, the Lin family had successfully sold 300 pieces of Yang Yuan stones, acquiring 32 Yang Yuan pills. Under Lin Zhenshan's direction, Lin Dong had been bestowed 5 of these pills. After all, Lin Dong was the one who had discovered the mining lode, thus no one objected to this. The rest of the Yang Yuan pills were split between Lin Jintian, Lin Xiao, Lin Mang and Lin Ken. The 4 of them were at Heavenly Yuan stage, therefore, this kind of Yang Yuan pills were especially effective for them. If they took these pills regularly, it would definitely boost their training speed substantially. Of course, despite so, some of the younger generation members in the Lin family also obtained a few Yang Yuan pills. For example, Lin Xia and Lin Hong both obtained 1 Yang Yuan pill each. The current Lin family was gradually becoming more powerful due to the existence of the mining lode. In the past, it would be unthinkable to hand over even a single Yang Yuan pill to the younger generation. The quality of these Yang Yuan pills cannot compare to those refined by the stone talisman. Lin Dong fiddled with a Yang Yuan pill as his eyebrows slightly furrowed. He then took out the last Yang Yuan pill refined by the stone talisman. Contrasting the two in his hands, the difference between their appearance and brightness was immediately apparent. It is said that one needs to be at Dan Yuan stage before one is able to refine Yang Yuan pills from Yang Yuan stones. However, some powerful factions are able to use symbol arrays as a catalyst to lower the requirements, though the Yang Yuan pills created would be at a lower grade. This must be how these Yang Yuan pills were produced. Lin Dong rolled Yang Yuan pill between his fingers as he muttered thoughtfully to himself. As he thought of these symbol arrays, a thought flashed through Lin Dong's mind. He quickly retrieved the manual that the old man in gray had given him earlier today from his Qian Kuan bag. Spiritual Movement Chapter. The name of that manual sounded rather impressive. However, after Lin Dong flipped through it, he realized that it was just a chapter on how to train mental energy, and it seemed like only the first 3 parts were contained within this book. Nonetheless, this short manual was pretty valuable, and he never expected that the old man would actually give away such a precious item during their first meeting. Basically, seal masters were practitioners who utilize a different method of exerting yuan power. This method needed mental energy to propel yuan power. Evidently, this spiritual movement chapter was used to develop mental energy. Lin Dong attentively flipped through this spiritual movement chapter. After a long time, he started to nod his head gently. Simply put, the instructions written on this manual were very cryptic. However, for some reason, Lin Dong was able to comprehend it rapidly. This sensation was as if he possessed natural talent for training in these arts. This discovery caused Lin Dong to become somewhat surprised. He could sense that this kind of talent was perhaps something that he was born with and not something given to him by an external force. This was a talent that was a part of him, but was left undiscovered till now. Lin Dong carefully kept the spiritual movement chapter in his Qian Kuan bag. Hesitating for a moment before he slowly shut his eyes, directing his 5 senses towards the heavens, eyes to nose, nose to heart. Spirit is split into yin and yang, spiritual movement begins with life. As Lin Dong began to recite this mysterious chant in his heart, his thoughts gradually condensed together. Like a statue, he continued in this state for nearly half an hour before his mental energy was suddenly dazzled as bit by bit, his mental energy began to seep out from his mind and slowly spread itself. As his mental energy slowly extended, even though Lin Dong's eyes were tightly shut, he could clearly see the interior of the room. Then, his vision once again expanded and he found his formless mental energy floating in the sky as every movement in nearly half of the entire manner was reflected clearly in his mind. Mental energy was able to penetrate through every surface, and most people were oblivious with regards to the existence of this formless mental energy. Therefore, many of them did not know that their every movement was being spied on now. This magical scene was a totally new and exciting experience for Lin Dong. Compared to yuan power, mental energy was faintly discernible like mist. However, this form of energy truly existed. Lin Jintian sat peacefully in one of the rooms in the manner as streams of yuan power continuously rushed into his body. However, he did not remain in this calm state for long, as both of his eyes suddenly opened. With a vicious glare, he stared at the air in front of him and shouted in a stern voice, "I don't know who you are, but why are you spying on my Lin family?" After Lin Jintian shouted, a powerful yuan power undulated as it burst out of his body and violently clashed with the air in front of him. Bang! After that formless collision, an extremely soft echo sounded out before it was once again returned to nothingness. At this point, a serious look surfaced on Lin Zhenqian's face. The power he had sensed from before should be mental energy belonging to a seal master. However, since when did his Lin family offend a seal master? Could he be sent by the Lei family? Just as Lin Zhenqian's facial expression darkened, in a distant room, Lin Dong's eyes suddenly opened. Even though his face was pale, a look of delight and excitement danced in his eyes. Chapter 67, Ominous Clouds. There was no doubt that the Lin family's first successful sale of the Yang Yuan stones had benefited them tremendously. The enormous profits earned was truly jaw-dropping. After all, when they exchanged an entire huge batch of steel wood, they only managed to get around 20 Yang Yuan stones, an amount that was merely equivalent to 1 day's work at the mining lode. It was completely impossible to compare the two of them. Due to this reason, ever since they successfully sold their first batch of Yang Yuan stones, Lin Jintian mobilized nearly 70 to 80% of the Lin family's manpower to the Steelwood Manor. From the outside, it seemed like he was intending to operate this Steelwood Manor as a major enterprise.